Yeah, g'day everyone, and welcome back to the TryPod live with Winnie and Clarkey. We are now live all over social media, broadcasting absolutely everywhere there is to broadcast for our round 24 NRL preview and best bet show, which we're really excited to bring you all. Let me welcome in the founder of TryPod on that note, the ever reliable Jacob Wynn, my friend. How are you going, brother?
I'm fantastic, thanks, mate. Sporting a gold medal. Look, credit where credit's due. My son actually won this in a race at Kindy, but I kind of feel like an Olympic champion as well. What a ride we had over the Olympics. The $13 medal multi that I gave to you on this very show 3 weeks ago. What a ride. It came down to the final leg. We cashed 3 out of the 4 legs. The final one was USA under 40.5 goals. They land on 40 golds. And the final night, there was 3 events. We couldn't have the USA win 2 of them. And we got the women's volleyball, the Italians getting up. We got a takedown in the final minute of the wrestling to swing the gold medal for Japan. And then we watched USA win the basketball, win the cycling event. That's okay. They got to 40, half a gold. After 3 years ago, we lost by half a gold on the Tokyo Golden Multi. So ultimate redemption. And the best thing about it was all the people that messaged me and commented just how much extra enjoyment they got out of the Olympics and how it drew them to so many random sports and events that otherwise wouldn't have had a rooting interest in. So that's what it's all about. But it's one thing to just have a bit of fun, but to cash at $13 and to have, I think, 400 or 500 people who follow our show all riding along was fantastic, mate.
Absolutely, and we will apologise to Tristan there as the show sponsor for taking him to the bank. Mate, what have you got for us this week in the way of best bets for round 24? What do you like? What's standing out?
I have, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 best bets, but I should always say housekeeping, 4 and 2 on best bets last week as well, in addition to the Olympics. That got me sidetracked. We won the mixed matchup by 18 points, lost the same gamer. Nicole gave out a $17 winner and a 100-to-1 winner in his weekly clip. I know that Clarkey's collect missed by 1 leg, but still, that's a successful weekend in my book. And now we turn our attention to round 24, where we have the game of the season on Thursday night. And I am going to start there with my best bet. And of course, I'll give you that one. That best bet is Melbourne plus 2.5 in the first half at $1.88 on Ladbrokes and Neds. I think it's that close. I know that Edwards and Fish are named in the reserves, but I feel like the market is pricing in that they're playing, and I don't think that's 100% certain because Penrith don't have to absolutely play these boys. Sorry, I'm really stalling a little bit. Sorry, guys. It's because I didn't want to miss the price on Dabble. So I was backing these same game multis while I was talking. Okay, that's the main reason for Storm. We'll get more into the matchup. I think it's a beauty. Game of the season. 2.5 in the first half. I'm happy with that. My next best bet, which you can copy from Jack win on Dabble, I'm taking Manly to win both halves against New Zealand. They're at home. It's $1.92. I'm taking the Roosters to win both halves. They're at home to the Eels. It's $1.80 on Dabble. And I had to build them both as same game multis because you get a slightly better price. And I can couple those together as well because they're both a superior team, more motivated, home, fresh, playing New Zealand and Parasites that are probably cooked. I'm going to go to another home side later. I'm taking the Cowboys minus 5.5. That's $1.82 on 365. It's also $1.79 for minus 4.5 on Sportsbet, which you could take that a couple cents less. I know the Cowboys were dismal last week, but their season's still well and truly alive. Canberra's not so much. And I actually don't mind taking a team off their most disappointing display of the year, which is kind of what the Cowboys was. It's still a light number for the better team at home. And then I'm going to take another home side. So I guess I'm on all home apart from the Storm game Thursday night. I'm going to take West Tigers plus 6.5, $1.88 on Sportsbet, 3 cents less toppy and better because neither of these teams have much to play for. But West are trying to win in front of the Campbelltown fans, you'd say. And I don't think that Souths actually have way more firepower than West. I took the plus 10.5 and I felt like I should have covered when these sides met a few weeks ago in a neutral venue. Now you bring West at home and I feel a similar way. So I will take the ugliest of ducklings Saturday night. But converted try, over a converted try, I had to do it.
Mate, fair play there. I will be saving Clarkey's Collect until the end of this show, not by the nature of withholding it. It's just one of the games that I like is the final one of the round, so it makes sense to bring it there. It's a $3.42 multi, so it does follow the similar theme of my last 3 or 4. I know the last one missed with the Panthers not winning by 10, but I don't want to abandon that strategy straight away, just based off one kind of shock result, you'd have to say there with the Panthers-Eels games. So we will get to every single game in just a moment. We'll go through all 8 and give you everything you need to know and break it down from a punting perspective. But before we do so, we have a clip from the CEO of Top Sport, Mr. Tristan Merlehan, for you all.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan Merlehan here from Top Sport, and we're finally over the Olympics, and well done to everyone who got involved in Jacob's multi there. It came down to the wire again, and this time the chocolates went to the punters. So it was a good watch and great selection, and yeah, it made it very enjoyable over the course of the 2 weeks. So now we move full bore into the NRL, where there's only 4 weeks left of the season, and there's some crucial games coming up over the next bit, both in minor premiership contention, top 4, top 8. Probably the wooden spoons decider. But yeah, some good games on the weekend. Obviously, starting off on Thursday with the Panthers against the Storm. And it's a tricky one to price up because we've gone 5.5. 2 key inclusions on the extended bench, Dylan Edwards and James Fisher-Harris. So the market hasn't moved since we opened it at 5.5, but obviously all eyes on those 2 players because that will swing the betting one way or the other if they both line up or neither do, or one or the other. So keep an eye on that. Obviously, team lists are really crucial. Titans another one with Bo Firma named on the extended bench as well, so that line hasn't shifted either at 5.5 should I say. And all the other markets have been pretty solid. Probably one of the bigger moves has been over that key number of 6, where the Dolphins have gone plus 6.5 into 5.5, and all the games have been pretty steady away from that. So looking forward to another good weekend of rugby league. Good luck if you're having a wager, and of course, gamble responsibly.
Great stuff from Tristan there, as always. I think I noticed a few grey hairs, probably due to the Olympics multi, Tristan. No, I'm only joking. Let's move into it, Winnie. Game 1, Panthers v Storm, Thursday, 7:50 p.m. We're at Bluebet Stadium. The line was set at -5.5 against the Panthers. There's been no change since team lists. That's because Dylan Edwards and James Fisher-Harris are both on the extended bench, so they remain a chance to play, though not confirmed. Scott Sorensen and Liam Martin are both out, so Maverick Geyer and Liam Henry are their back rowers. For the Storm, Eliesa Katoa returns in the back row. That shifts around their forward pack with Tui Kamakamitha moving to the bench. And when I look at this one, Winnie, it is a blockbuster to start round 24 that simply just cannot be missed. If you're a fan of rugby league, you need to set your Thursday calendar around this game, mate. It is going to be a cracker, and you see it playing out with a solid first half at least from the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of league, like even a casual fan, people don't watch every week, but they definitely watch Origin. And this is going to be Origin level, and it's going to be as tight as maybe the Origin decider. I will take Melbourne plus 2.5 first half, $1.88 was my best bet. Hopefully it'll be a very good one. Storm are 2 points clear on the ladder. The plus minus is almost level. So if Melbourne wins, they will virtually wrap up the minor premiership. Should Penrith win, they'll definitely be in the box seat, but it wouldn't be decided. So as I explained on the recap, go back and check that out. But the too long didn't read is basically, if you like Melbourne, and I lean Melbourne in this one, take them for the minor premiership. Kyle Gordon posted in the group, he got 225. You get that double chance that you might win on Thursday, but even if you don't, you still have a shot down the road. If you like Penrith, just play Penrith in this match in a couple of days' time. Now, Fish and Edwards in the reserves would be huge, but as big as the game is, I feel like for Ivan, he knows he doesn't absolutely have to play these guys. He trusts who's been doing the job for them. He's definitely not going to rush someone back from an injury and jeopardize anything before the finals. And there's something to be said for saving an extra gear against your biggest rival before the finals. But on the other hand, it's your best finals dress rehearsal, and it is a very important game, and those boys will definitely want to play. However, Liam Martin and Sorensen are surely ruled out. And then you've got Melbourne actually getting stronger in the back row with Katoa back. I do think that's a big edge to the Storm with, as you said, Geyer and Henry are your wide-running forwards starting for Penrith. Let's start with the fact both these teams have been very underwhelming for the last couple of weeks. The Storm's off a home loss, awful second half against Souths. Penrith pushed to the wire by the Knights. and then absolutely by the Eels a week ago. But they probably both had an eye on this one. One man that has not been underwhelming is Nathan Cleary. He's like Super Mario when he runs through that star at the moment. Since returning from the hamstring injury, absolutely untouchable. I heard an interview with Fisher Harris and someone else saying that obviously Nate's been so diligent with his preparation and he's been in the gym, and at this point he can lift as much as the props as well. It's like some people have it all. But then I was thinking about it. When Cleary does the bench press, I mean, maybe he only lowers the bar to his chin, so it's a bit easier. You got to try and, you got to bring him down one peg for something, because it's as I say, it's like watching Michael Jordan in his prime right now. Yet I am going against Penrith, because usually when Penrith lines up, they have a massive advantage in the halves over anybody else with aforementioned Cleary and Luai. But you're lining up against Munster and Tues. It's actually a pretty even halves matchup and a mouth-watering one. As I said, intensity through the roof, origin quality. Penrith, I always feel that patient side, because they know what they can do in the last 20, that they don't force the issue early. So I feel like going first half against Penrith is not as frightening. I know that there's a chance Fish and Edwards could come in, but I actually think the line's already accounting for them being in. And if either doesn't play, I actually think the line could slip a little lower. So I respect that you've got to make Penrith the favourite here, and they're home, and they've got the home advantage. But I really don't think Penrith's much better than Melbourne, if at all, with who's available this week. So that's why I'm going to play the Storm, and I liked the first half angle.
Yeah, I do like the first half angle as well there. My tip for this one will be a little bit different, but let me start with this. I believe we could be watching a grand final preview. Based on what we've seen over the first 23 rounds of action so far this year, I don't expect too many fans to push back on that opinion. Underneath that, as another layer, is you have the form player of the last month with Nathan Cleary, who I've awarded my last 4 MVPs, up against the form player of the competition in Jerome Hughes, who I currently have leading the Dally M with only a few rounds left to go, both playing in that key position. Now, we know the Panthers, that they are fantastic at home. They are very hard to beat there. And the Storm have only lost on the road twice this year. Once was in Newcastle, where they were missing both halves. That was a 2-point loss. And then they did lose against the Sea Eagles, also missing Pappenhausen and Munster. That was by 6. So the Storm this year have an average away losing margin of 4. And on neither occasion were they full strength. Now to this Panthers side. I think it is fair to say, and you agreed with it earlier, that they kind of have gotten away with their last 2. They weren't at their best, talking Knights and Eels. But to be fair to the Panthers, they've also only had 2 losses at home this year. One was to the Cowboys by, I think it was 10 points, and the Dragons was at 10 points as well, both during the Origin period, right? So we have a side that's lost 2 away versus a side that's lost 2 at home, but in none of those games were either side full strength there. So it does make it really hard to break down. I went back to their round 1 encounter, and the Storm did win that 8-0, but it was a 1-try game, and it's a completely different stage of the season. As great as both sides are, you do not expect them to be at their best in round 1. But now that we're getting towards the pointy end of the season, they are different sides. Both teams concede under 18 points per game across the season so far. So the unders market could be a play if you see both sides kind of centering this game around their defense. I think that's a huge possibility. If I have to give a tip, I will say Panthers, because they have won 5 of their last 7 against the Storm. And they do take it more personal since that 2020 grand final loss. But if I had to bet on this, Winnie, then I'd take either side 1-12. I'm really struggling to split them. I think it'll be a close one. I think it'll be a low scorer, but I still think it's going to be a fantastic game that footy fans do not want to miss. All right, my voice is just holding on.
Sorry, let me interrupt you, because Nicole's tip is actually on this game, and we all want to know what he's doing for an encore this week.
100%.
Hey everyone, Nicole from Wiki here. Look, early anytime try score tips. I've got a couple of really good prices for you. The best one is Liam Henry. He's 11s to score anytime on Bet365. He's playing second row. Yes, it's against the Storm, but honestly, it's about 1.5 times, maybe close to double what the fair price I think should be for this play. The other one is Sam Walker at $4. He's playing para. Compared to our model, other bookies, everything. Really good price early on for Sam Walker. As always, guys, Google Wiki Linktree. We've cracked 5,000 people on our Discord. Had an awesome last couple of weekends. Had Dan Seifert at 81s and Willison at 51's in the article, but I did mention Willison on the in this exact video this time last week on the potty. So I hope a few of you guys got on. I was jumping up and down when Willison scored. Anyways, guys, enjoy your weekends. Only 4 full weekends, unfortunately, of footy to go, but I'm sure it'll be a cracker. Enjoy yourselves.
Great stuff there from Nicole, as always, and coming off a
mate,
one.
While you were, since you mentioned either team 1 to 12, I had a little peek again. Like that's $1.67 on Toppy, but that is $1.80 on 365, which I reckon's a great bet. Like I've given out my best bet. I'm taking plus 2.5 first half. But either team 1 to 12, it's hard to see either of these sides beating 13 plus. Now I did think about that one going into this game, and I actually thought when Penrith's down, if Penrith are down a try or two, they actually play way more risky because they fully believe they can win. But it does mean that there could be more variance. And I actually think Penrith's the type of team that is just as susceptible to lose 13 plus as they are to lose narrowly, because they're not going to die wondering. And of course, Penrith is also the team that when they get on top can put aside for the sword. So as close as I reckon it could be a little bit like Origin 3, where it was dead even for so long. And while that did fall within a 1 to 12 margin, New South Wales nearly broke the damn wall at the end. So that's why no $1.80 is a certainty, but I'm sure you like the sound of that. And I just thought I'd share it because other people will for sure.
I'm happy to tip it, mate. I didn't know that it was around that $1.80 mark. I expected it to be a little bit shorter, actually, just based on that line. So the fact that we can get $1.80 for that on Bet365 is awesome. And of course, thank you very much to Nicole for that clip. If you guys forgot, $101. He tipped Xavier Willison for the last try scorer last round. So absolutely put his money where his mouth was and nailed it.
And you said at the time that 365 was a bit sleepy with who was starting. They didn't realize Willison was starting. Maybe the same thing. He's tipped Henry. Maybe 365's pricing Henry like a bench forward, I would say. Right. But the fact is that Nicole on his website where he tipped his tips for the week still tipped Willison at 51. Even when the odds halved, they still believed it was a good value bet and still tipped it as well. So doubled down on the fact you may have got 100 if you watched us live, and they doubled down if you check the tip out anytime. They're not going to hit every week. You're not even meant to hit 100 to 1 every season. So we really do need to celebrate moments like that. And let's see what he does this week.
The last time we almost hit 101, I don't even think it was 101, Mitchell Moses. I was going to say it involved Mitchell Moses, but how much was that paying again?
200 to 1, mate. Thanks for bringing that up.
Mate, so close. And oh, man, that's, yeah. All righty, let's keep moving on. Game 2, Seagulls versus Warriors, Friday, 6 p.m. game. We're at 4 Pines Park, and the line is set at minus 15.5 against Manly. There's been no change there since team list. For Manly, Josh Aloiai returns at prop. That pushes Nathan Brown to the bench. For the Warriors, Sean Johnson is in, Tamari Martin is out, Adam Pompey and Marcelo Montoya both return. And we have two sides here, Winnie, that competed very differently last round. Manly blew their opponents off the park, whilst the Warriors fought hard to the death. So when you break this one down, how do you see it playing out?
First, I think about the fact it's a rematch of a tie that we had earlier this year, and the Warriors were 7.5-point favourites that night at Mount Smart. So this line is 22 points different. The swing says a bit about how these sides shape up at this point in the year. Of course, home field is flipped as well. Manly looked sharp last week. In the recap, Manly was my best bet, and I probably made it sound too easy that Manly just blew out the Raiders, and what a great tip it was. The truth is, as you mentioned, there was a big swing right before the halftime siren where the Raiders scored a try, but the whistle blew for a knock-on. The Raiders challenged it, found it wasn't a knock-on, but they couldn't keep the try because the whistle had gone, and then they didn't score, and then Manly scored final play of the half. That's a 12-point swing. Second half, Manly opened things up and show what they're capable of. The Warriors remain a mystery to me because I thought they could easily be blown away by the Finns last week, especially once Johnson was ruled out. So then where's the emotional lift coming from? And especially also once the Dolphins got up 20-6 at halftime. Thought New Zealand would go out with a whimper, but New Zealand fought so hard. However, they fell short yet again. So their season, the Warriors, is definitely over. Johnson back now, though. So does that give the boost that they need However, we've talked about Tamari Martin's probably the superior player at this point. So from a playing standpoint, not sure. And I also just think that I don't know if Johnson can get the best out of his teammates for the final 3 straight weeks. Yeah, round 24, 5, and 6. Because as you said, they're at the bye in round 27. If anything, surely they're going to make one of these home games the grand final. So I'm not sold that just because Johnson's back that the Warriors will fight and defend with desperation all night. I could see what I think has happened a lot this year is we've seen teams get flogged, and then mentally you're like, that team's soft, that team's hopeless, that team's given up, and people want to bet against teams off a flogging. But often those are the weeks where that team stares himself in the mirror, trains a bit harder, is embarrassed. So I actually think the best teams to play against are the ones that actually did fight all the way and had a heartbreaking loss. You could even put Canberra in that category, fought so hard against the Dogs, and the next week against Manly just couldn't replicate it. That's kind of what New Zealand's done and fought for beyond 80 minutes against the Dolphins. And now you're away again against an even tougher prospect. I think Manly's going to win this big. The line's 15.5, could easily play that. Just decided win both halves because I'm sure as long as Manly wins the first half, then they go on with it. The only risk of this being a closer game is if New Zealand turns up to play, a couple of things go their way, perhaps they find themselves in front, then I could see them buying in because they'd love to send SJ out with a couple of wins. But more than likely to me, Manly is going to have a night out.
Based on everything you just said, then we are seeing this game extremely similarly. I suppose I'll start on Shaun Johnson. Wasn't a part of my notes, but you did mention him there, and it kind of reminded me. What it brings me back to was Jared Croker last year for the Raiders on a swan song tour, where he wasn't the best center option for them. Their best center options were Chris and Tomoko, but Croker got the start based on his reputation. And that's what we have with Shaun Johnson now. I've got no doubt TMM is the more effective player for this Warriors side, based on what I've seen over this season so far, but SJ is there. Now on to both sides. I thought that they did their best work in the second half last round. So if I'm looking to that as my separating factor, I immediately prefer Manly. They blew the Raiders off the park. They scored 5 tries in 18 minutes, whilst the Warriors went to a hard-fought Golden Point loss. So I have to imagine Manly are fresher game-wise, certainly travel-wise, and they do return home, which is another key factor for me. They've been awesome at home this year. They have won 8 of their 9 home games so far this year at 4 Pines, and that one loss was to the Raiders, and they wrote that wrong very, very well, or righted that wrong rather very, very well last round. Now, why do I bring that up? Because just 3 weeks before that loss to the Raiders at home, they drew with the Warriors in New Zealand. And I have to say, just like we saw them get revenge on the Raiders, this Manly side has improved a lot since that draw to New Zealand. They have gotten stronger, and I don't think you can say the same about the Warriors because they have only won 3 games since their round 13 bye, those being the Tigers, Broncos, and Cowboys. And the Cowboys did show us last round they're capable of a no-show at home, and that's what we got when the Warriors beat them with hindsight. And then, of course, no disrespect to the Tigers and Broncos, but at the time the Warriors beat them, they were both struggling for form. I think AFB will be really up for this game against his former Manly teammates, and I think the Warriors will want the win for Shaun Johnson, but I just don't think they have what it takes when I break it all down. So I have to say Manly win here and win well, and I'm very confident on that tip. Game 3, mate, Roosters v Eels, Friday, 8 p.m, Allianz Stadium. The line is set at -16.5 against the Roosters, and there's been no change since team lists. No change to the Roosters side. One change for the Eels. Kelma Tuolangi is back on their bench. And Winnie, it's another super easy one to tip head-to-head. You have for us in this game, Roosters to win both halves. And I think that's a great best bet, mate. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I thought last week was super easy to tip as well in the Parramatta game. I saw no possibility that Penrith could lose that game. And luckily, my best bet got up. And again, I do have Roosters to win both halves, $1.80, copy me on Dabble. And in the previous game, Manly to win both halves, $1.92, which you can copy on Dabble, right? And it's a similar reasoning again that I'm going to go against the team that gave everything. And Para's done that 2 weeks in a row and got a heartbreaking defeat. I mean, talk about New Zealand having a heartbreaking defeat in Golden Point to the Finns, where again they scored more tries. But what about Para? You've got the back-to-back premiers on the rack. I didn't realize in live betting, Penrith got out to 100-1. I've seen slips this week. That was when Penrith was down 14 with under 10 to go. And if a bookie is giving you Penrith at 100-1, it means that they believe it should be closer to true odds 1,000-1. But Parramatta couldn't hang on. As for the Roosters, they got to chill and have a bye after a win that was closer than they anticipated in Perth. And now the Roosters come in fresh, same 17. Collins all good after that head knock. I don't see another scenario than the Roosters demolishing the Eels. Sydney wants to secure that top 4 spot and stay safe there, because the Dogs are really trying to grab 3rd or 4th. And look, as good as the Eels have been the last 2 weeks, it's so hard to maintain that. And I just can't see the Eels sticking in it for a 3rd straight week as a huge outsider. It's a pretty simple one to me.
I'm seeing this one pretty much the same as you as well, mate. And I went Roosters without too much thought at all, if I'm absolutely honest. But to give everyone a bit of a breakdown of how I arrived there, the Eels have only beaten the Roosters twice since 2016. So we're talking an 8-year period now. And more importantly for the Eels, when we talk 2024 this season, they've only recorded 1 win away from home. Now, that was in New Zealand, of all places. So whilst I suppose the first glance look at that, you would say, oh, well, it's an away game, but they're still in Sydney. It's not big travel. It doesn't fly. They have not been winning away from CommBank at all. And when I look at this Eels side, I think they had their grand final last week, and I think it's all downhill from here for the Eels. I don't see the Roosters allowing them back into the game like Penrith did, and how the Titans had their grand final against the Broncos and then stunk it up against the Sharkies. I could see the Eels really replicating that this round. Now, stats-wise, the Roosters have conceded an average of 29 points in their past 3 games, and the Eels did just score 34 points. So it's not impossible for them to be in this game. But I just think when you consider their record across this season, the fact the Roosters are coming in fresh off a bye, I think they would have addressed that deficiency in their game winning at this time of the year. And the reason why I say that is because when the Roosters went back-to-back in 2018 and 19, Trent Robinson was still the coach. And across all finals games, they conceded an average less than 12 points, which is so impressive. So I know Trent Robinson will be happy they're still winning, but I think this week the focus for the Roosters will really be locking down that defense, and we know their attack just flows. If we go season averages, the Roosters score 30 points on average per game, and the Eels concede 29 points per game. So I would be looking at the Roosters to put a pretty solid score on here. I could see them scoring 30 or more points and really doing it comfortably, if I'm absolutely honest.
And Roosters' team total was 32.5, which was something else I strongly considered as a best bet, because that's how Para wants to play, an open game, and hope that everything clicks for them. It's the only really way they know how to play at this point in the year. But I definitely appreciate the notion that the Roosters know the formula for them to become a team that can make a run to the grand final and potentially hoist a trophy is to elevate the defense. The attack will come, and the attack is capable of troubling the best there is defensively. But Roosters off a bye will absolutely challenge themselves to restrict Para as well. So you think the Roosters can basically dominate both sides of the ball, then you don't need to limit yourself to just an attack-based best bet. And that's why I like my either team win both halves, but I would also lay the 16.5. Both should be winning.
That's an interesting take there, because I'll come clean. I do have the Roosters as something in my multi, which we'll reveal later. But I wasn't sure whether to go at it from a defensive angle or an attacking angle, because they're great at both. But
so just play the line, basically. That's my advice generally. But we'll have to wait and see what you've done.
Absolutely. Game 4 is the Bulldogs v Dolphins. It's at Saturday 3 p.m. We're at Salter Oval in Bundaberg. Line was set at -6 against the Dogs. It shifted ever so slightly to -5.5. For the Bulldogs, Jamin Salmon is back on their bench. For the Dolphins, Mark Nichols is out, so Lachlan Hubner comes in. And when we talk this Doggies side in 2024, Winnie, they are undefeated at home. But this is a home game in Bundaberg, which could be a threat to that otherwise perfect record, mate. So what do you think? Do you see Doggies making it 10 from 10 this year as the home side, or do you prefer your Finns?
Dogs should be favourites. So if I've got to tip head-to-head, unfortunately, I would tip Canterbury. They're going so well. But the Dolphins kept their season alive and more than that, climbed back into the 8 thanks to that extra time escape over the Warriors last week. The Dogs, what can you say? Disciplined, composed, controlled the game from start to finish against St. George. Yeah. Where was that one? That was at Cogra, right?
That was at Nostrada Jubilee. Yeah, Cogra. Yep.
Yeah. And that was a sold out house. So I couldn't be more impressed by the Bulldogs. We've discussed several of their strengths throughout the season, but one deficiency we highlighted coming into the year was perhaps the lack of an elite lock forward. There were also many jokes made about how many utilities Gus seemed to be signing for the Bulldogs. I have to say, Kurt Mann is having a stellar season at 13, linking with the halves well. And what a genius move, again, by Ciraldo when he realised that Toby Sexton could be a better halfback than Drew Hutchison. Haven't they just played so much better? Like, I don't know how he figured that out, the mad scientist he must be, but it's been a masterstroke. If only someone thought of it a little earlier in the year. Then you got the back line. They're all a handful. Addo Carr's back from injury. Kiraz, we talked about Cherry, Crichton. That's a major concern for the Finns to deal with. Could also remember this match was played in Bundy last season too, and the Dogs won that one 23-22. It was basically a bottom 4 match last year. So how far both these teams have come. When I saw the line and I saw -5.5, that threw me. I thought that's very light on the Bulldogs. Then I remembered the venue, which makes it make a bit more sense. I still lean to the Dogs -5.5. I consider that as a best bet because the Bulldogs are superior to the Finns. But I do feel like you actually have to give the Dolphins a little home advantage, being a Queensland game, not travelling as far. And although the Dogs nominate this as a home game, so the crowd might appreciate that, I feel like most of the home fans will be cheering on the Dolphins, and they've seemed to have done reasonably well. Always give a good account of themselves, the Dolphins, when they go to a neutral venue. And I don't think this one will even be neutral. I also don't think you can stack up the Dogs' home record and say because they're listed first in the fixtures that this is like a home game. But I suppose just in the ladder, to have an unbeaten season at home is still on the line. But the Dogs are bringing it every week, as we saw last week, which was on the road. What I'm also worried about from a Dolphin perspective is the dichotomy between the Redcliffe Kings in the first half to second half. What a major red flag. At this point, you actually question whether fitness is lacking for the Finns. I've also talked about missing Marshall King. And when you have a young halfback, maybe you're not icing games like you should second half, but at some point you've got to learn. And yet again, the second half really cost the Dolphins, nearly cost them ultimately. And you've got Nicarima, who's a veteran out there at this point. O'Sullivan brings a little bit off the bench in terms of decision making. So it has to be a focus for the Finns. I don't expect it should just be automatic, play Dolphins first half, play against them second half. But I wouldn't go against those trends either. I think this line should be 6, maybe even a little above. So again, I was very tempted into the -5.5 if people want to go that way. But I am conscious of a springboard effect that the Finns broke a little losing streak and got a tight win, and they got a scare that Bennett can still treat like a loss and search for improvement. They're not going to overlook the opponent whatsoever. And it means so much to the Dolphins to make this charge into the finals and make history for the club. So I think they'll be absolutely switched on. It's enough for me to stay out of it and expect a good game that could land somewhere right around the number.
Yeah, it is a tough game to tip as soon as you introduce that line. And I suppose that's my first point that I'll start with is it is more advantageous to the Dolphins here in terms of where it's being played, shorter travel, and you would expect there'd be more Dolphins fans there than Doggies fans. Where I am most concerned for the Bulldogs here, they have only won 2 of their last 9 games in Queensland. So it is a state they seem to struggle in. And I look to Magic Round this year as another example. I thought they were really good favourites against the Raiders. and they dropped that game there. Now, these sides have only met once before in history. It was at this ground, round 22 last year, so similar timeline as well. As you mentioned, Doggies, 23 points to 22. The difference, a Matt Burton field goal, but in the first half, not the second half there. It's an interesting one because I do think whilst the Dolphins drop off in the second half, there are plenty of examples this year of them fighting for the full 80. And then, they're not as consistent in that manner as the Bulldogs are. I would certainly not go that far, but it could be a game where, as you mentioned, some external factors for the Dolphins mentally, such as Wayne Bennett's last year, we want to make history and be the first Dolphins side to play finals. That could really spur an 80-minute performance out of them with the springboard effect against a Doggy side that we know does play 80 minutes. So I think if I had to tip someone here, I would actually prefer the Dolphins, just based on the Bulldogs' poor record in Queensland winning. And I'm also kind of compounding that stat with how poor they have been in general away this year, with 3 wins from 10 attempts. And then, of course, they are 2 from 9 in Queensland recently. So away games is just a little bit strange for the Doggies, but I can't quite doubt them. They've been really awesome this year. So if I had to tip, Dolphins, but that's not how I'm going to tip this one. I'm going to say Jake Averillo to score against his former side in the centres. Now, he'll be up against Bronson Xerri, who's been awesome this year, but he is missing 1 out of every 5 tackles he attempted. And Jake Averillo's strike rate is 7 out of 19, so slightly more than a 1 in 3 chance, but we do know players generally step it up against their former sides. So my tip in this one will actually be Jake Averillo to score. And if you want to add or have a bit more of a value play, I suppose, with a smaller unit stake, it is worth mentioning Bronson Xerri has 5 tries in his last 5 games, and Averillo's defense efficiency is only 3% higher than Bronson Xerri, so slightly better than 1 every 5. So if you want to add a bit of risk to it and get a bit of value, you could take both to score. But my tip, Jake Averillo. Game 5, mate. We've got Cowboys v Raiders Saturday, 5:30 p.m. We're at Queensland Country Bank Stadium, and the line is set at -6.5 against the Cowboys and has not moved. Chad Townsend has been dropped. Jake Clifford is their new halfback. Jeremiah Nanai is out, so Finny Fuiaki moves to the back row. Thomas McKaylee joins their bench. For the Raiders, no Jordan Rapana. That moves Sebastian Chris to the wing, Ethan Strange to centre, and Adam Cook remains in the halves. And Winnie, this is 2 sides that really desperately need to make amends for their performances last round. I expect this will be a great game to watch for everyone as well. Who do you think walks away with the 2 competition points here, and why is it the Cowboys?
I'll tell you why. I liked the Cowboys last week. That was a losing best bet. -7.5 I played against Brisbane. The line is 6.5 in most places. This week's are pretty similar, but I played the last of the 5.5s on 365, or as I said, it was available as an alt line on Sporties. And who's better, Brisbane or Canberra? Like, Canberra's going a little better, but Brisbane probably still had a bit more to offer. The thing is, the Cowboys were garbage last week. From the point of leading 18-6, as I said on the recap, how do you explain the capitulation? But I will give them another shot because of the embarrassment of that game and because the Cowboys need to dust themselves off and consolidate. They still should be playing finals from the position that they're in, and will still be striving for a home final in the second half, or in the second half of the top 8. So let's just go for that disappointing team after being embarrassed, because we might actually see a bit of fight back, especially since they're at home again and they want to redeem themselves in front of home fans. Yes, Nanai is a big loss, and the game changed when Nanai went out last week. But as you say, a good couple of second-row options that the Cowboys still possess. Townsend dropped, as I called for on Sunday. Said enough's enough there. Clifford's in, Purdue's on the bench. So I think there's upside there as well. Canberra's not as threatening to me when Strange is outside of the 6 jerseys in centre in this one, in my opinion. So that's 1 plus as well to fade the Raiders, who are a team that wants to bring you down to their level, are a team definitely capable of an upset, capable of winning ugly games, but also not a top 8 level side. The truth is their run might be over after they were able to go with Manly second half last week, and reality could set in for the Raiders. There could be a little bit of a letdown after not being able to win that one at home. So as bad as North Queensland were last week, maybe that keeps some other punters off them. We get a slightly lower line that I'll take on the team that has it all to play for, is at home, and is still the better side.
And I'm seeing this one really similar as well, to be honest, mate. I think I'll start with your point on Jake Clifford. I agree. And I actually think that's a positive for the Cowboys because he knows he has to come in and have an immediate effect. You know, he can't come in and pitter-patter around with finals around the corner. So I expect we will see a great performance out of him. I looked at the Cowboys here, and we're just at a point of the season where last week's effort will not fly back-to-back. It is as simple as that. And they have won their last 5 in a row over the Raiders. And it's also Tom Dearden's 100th NRL game. Now, they're still at home. So when you look at correcting what was a very poor performance last week, you couldn't have a better preparation. You do not need to travel. You stay with your family all week. You go to training and you fix what went wrong. Meanwhile, the Raiders this year, they've only won 2 of their last 8 away games this year. So seemingly everything is in the Cowboys' favor here as far as I'm concerned. Both teams are conceding 25 points per game this year. And that's probably the only area at first glance I would have given to the Raiders. I would have said they had better defense than the Cowboys do, but stats show us that is just simply not true there. So I've got Cowboys here. My tip is at the line. I think what we expected from them last round, we'll get this round with adjustments made. And the swing last week, when I'll just touch on that quickly, I actually thought it was in the first half. The Cowboys made a break, and instead of kicking ahead, they passed it, and it was called forward. It would have been a try. They would have gone up 24-6. Instead, it's called back, and then Broncos score, and it's 12-18 at halftime. And I was watching this one at the pub with my mate, and he didn't seem too phased. And I'm like, nah, man, that's a big shift because now Broncos' mentality is going to be, we need to score next. We're back in this game. And the Cowboys were rattled after that point, it seemed as well. So either way,
I totally agree, man. The Broncos won by 22 in the end. So no one's going to say like, where a try got disallowed or a try got butchered. It doesn't matter. They lost by 22. But it is dramatic, these swings, because Brisbane could very well have given up. So a moment like that, it could have been such a different result. And then what would this line be, So, but it's still no excuse for the way that the Cowboys dropped their heads and gave in. And I agree that the Cowboys are a hard team to figure out and a hard team to trust because it's not the only home no-show. But it sounds like we do agree. Let us know if there's a stronger case to be made for Canberra in the comments. But surely there's a bounce back for Townsville at home here.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a bounce back from the Raiders based on everything we broke down there. Game 6, mate, is the Tigers v Rabbitohs, Saturday, 7:35 p.m. at Campbelltown Stadium. The line was minus 5.5 against the Rabbitohs. It's now moved to minus 6.5. Michael Cheekham is out for them, so Jacob Host comes in. For the Tigers, I'm sure I'm going to butcher this surname, Lawalili, their new winger. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, sorry. And Alamalo is out. Alex Seyfarth is in. Ruben Porter is out. And Winnie, we arrive at the poo slinger of the week. Seriously, if both of these sides just agreed, we'll have a draw here. We'll take 1 point each. Doesn't matter. And I could save 2 hours of my life. That would be perfect. But life doesn't always go the way you want, mate. So we push on. And this one should be made more interesting by your best bet, where you think the Tigers can work a little bit of Benji's magic into Campbelltown.
I do. And the Wests have gone so badly the last few weeks. At some point, they'll cover a line. So I have a feeling it will be this week, and other people might be fed up with the Tigers. And the general punter doesn't want to back them anyway. They're last on the ladder. If they're not the worst team in the comp, the way that the Eels have gone the last couple of weeks, actually no one's going to debate. Wests are the worst team in the comp. It's just that there's still a little bit of life in this team. There's a few spark plugs in there, and it's the opponent for me. It's Souths away. What are Souths playing for at this point? Souths gave a decent effort against the Storm last week, and I've got to say, in terms of the turnaround, there's an advantage to the Rabbitohs, admittedly. Thursday night into Saturday versus Sunday into Saturday for the Tigers, but historically, it's not easy to get up for a game after you play Melbourne and their physical brand of footy. For me, it's Tigers at Campbelltown. This one could be a little tighter because I think the effort has to be there for West. If they're any chance of avoiding three straight spoons, West must win this game. West really do need to put another performance or two out there on the field to be proud of this year. It can't be a complete write-off in Benji's first season. No one expected him to get them to the finals, but you can't get blown out by double digits every week. And I took West plus 10.5, I think was a great bet against Souths about a month ago, where West led the game with 20 to go. But unfortunately, a sin bin, 3 straight tries late. Damien Cook, who's not even a good kicker, kicking 7 goals in a row, and we lose the cover by a couple of points. I'm a little snake bitten by that, but I'll go again. And no, it's only 6.5 this time, and it was $1.88 sports bet, or a couple cents lower, toppy and better. But it's a true home game for West. I like, since Dewey's come back in there, what he brings to centres, as well as for Tarpe. Compare that to South's backline with Kenner, Milne in the centres. Johnston is out. Spines on both sides have players that can produce, and I don't think the packs are that far apart. So it's an ugly one, but just hold your nose and take West, I reckon.
Yeah, I look at this game, and I'll start with the Tigers. Now, they did snap their 10-game losing streak at Campbelltown earlier this year. I think it was against the Raiders. And, when you look at it, the Rabbitohs have only lost 1 of their last 9 to the Tigers. But I think, in line with what you were saying earlier this year regarding the Campbelltown stats and the Leichhardt stats, when I would say, Tigers have only won 1 out of however much, that stat of the Rabbitohs being 8 from 9 recently against the Tigers, I think it's more so reflective of where the Tigers have been for a while form-wise, as opposed to anything else that we should be circling out there. But you go to these teams when, and in their last 10 games, they each have one win combined. And that win, ironically, was the Rabbitohs over the Tigers. So it's, you know what I mean? It's bad. You always say that it is tougher to back it up twice against a side in a season. I respect that. And this Rabbitohs side has only gotten weaker since that win over the Tigers due to injuries. I look at this line and I think it should be closer, because genuinely the Rabbitohs were not good against Melbourne. It was that Melbourne were very poor in that second half and allowed them back into the contest. But I still just cannot trust the Tigers, man. I just can't. If I had to take a bet on this game, Winnie, I'd be looking at the overs market. Both teams are conceding a combined average of 28.5 points per game this year. This could be a high-scoring kind of under-20s game, for sure. Could the Tigers give away a sin bin and ruin the bet? Your best bet, rather? Absolutely. Am I excited for this game? A little bit. Like, if it is a high score, it'll be at least fun to watch. And do I have a tip? No, I don't. I can't find anything that I like in this one, mate. So I will leave it at that. Alrighty, this one. Of course, everyone's been waiting for this. Game 7, Dragons v Titans. Sunday, 2 p.m. We're at Wynn Stadium in Wollongong. The line is set at -5.5 against the Dragons. No changes there. For the Dragons, the Fear Guy brothers are in their centres. Jack Bird returns on the bench. Moses Sully and Hame Sele are out for them. And for the Titans, Brian Kelly is in. That shifts AJ Brimson to the bench. Fotuaika is out. And Keenan Palacia is in. Winnie, it is the big dog Kieran Foran's 300th NRL game. I've got unconfirmed reports that I will be watching UFC in the crowd on a phone, even though it's a huge pay-per-view. There on the Wollongong Hill, ready to hand out knuckle sandwiches to any would-be Dragons fans. Who wins, and why is it the Titans on this glorious milestone occasion that Kieran Foran brings up for our club?
Well, respect for you making the trip up there Sunday. I can see there's actually a bunch of comments in the chat about UFC. What is it? Is it UFC? It's not UFC 300 this weekend, is it?
No, I think it's 305 this weekend. It's
okay.
an Australian
so it shows how close I've finished it. But big UFC, it's obviously the 300 that's in my mind is Kieran Foran 300. But the Dragons, beware this yo-yo team, as we covered in the recap, and after a bad loss last week, should be up this week, right? Remember when these teams met, it was actually the Titans' first game of the year, and what high hopes we had, both of us had for the Titans, and then suddenly it's like 28-4, and that summed up both teams' years. Dragons under the radar and Titans underwhelming. St. George has to win this game at home, 6-point favourite to make the finals, right? So it's a highly important game for the Dragons. The Titans can't make the finals after the Sharks game, but you do expect that wake-up call. You'd beaten 44-0, you're embarrassed. That's why you shouldn't read your press clippings, as you said on the recap as well. I'm actually excited that it's a really good spot for both teams to bring it. I'm expecting Kyle Flanagan gets suspended tonight. Is he fighting that charge tonight?
Yep, we'll get 3 or 4
who's going to
weeks.
play in the halves? Will it be Couchman? Because
No, it couldn't be
Marshke wasn't in the reserves. Flanagan's obviously named there, but let's assume Flanagan's out. Hame Sele and Moses Sully are also out. So you've got the Fiangai twins in the centres. Now, is it just me? There was a bit of hype about these players. I don't want to be overly critical, right? There's always that hype that St. George had the good crop coming through. I mean, one of them was Junior Monet, and his career has been totally derailed. I've never seen either of the Fiangai twins do anything special on the footy field. And there's 2 of them, so there should be twice as much. I don't know if it's just me. So I don't fear those guys. AJ at centre was a failure last week, to be fair, but now he plays 14, where Brimson could be dangerous. Big Mo being suspended for this one does hurt you. I think there's still reasons that both sides will bounce back from such bad displays last week. In all fairness, as the Titans were horrible, the Dragons were not that bad. It was much more about the Dogs being at their dominant best. So I don't want to make it out like the Dragons have got a lot to make up for, but they'll definitely, whenever you get beat by double digits at home, you want to respond. I think the Dragons do. At Winnie Stadium, I lean to the -5.5 with St. George, but I suppose the ability the Titans have still got, if they show up, I know that the Titans are capable of playing spoiler.
Well, Winnie, let's start with round 1. You mentioned it, and Kieran Foran was missing for that game. And he can be my hero baby, because it would be poetic justice for him to come back and get the win for the Titans here. And can I also say, and everyone is welcome to disagree with me, and I completely respect you guys disagreeing here, it would be the most Titans thing ever to win this game. All righty, Winnie? So the Titans have played 20 games this year. Did anyone expect them to get pumped in round 1? No. Did anyone expect them to get pumped by the Bulldogs in round 2? No. Did anyone expect them to beat Manly? No. Did anyone expect the Melbourne Storm game to be close? No. Did anyone expect them to beat the Broncos on both occasions? No. Did anyone expect them to lose to the Tigers? No. Did anyone expect them to beat the Warriors in New Zealand on Anzac Day for the first ever Anzac Day in New Zealand and then beat them by 60 at home? No. Did anyone expect them to beat the Sharks in Coffs? No. Did anyone expect them to come back against the Dolphins when they went down 14-0? No. Did anyone expect them to lose to the Sharks last round 44-0? No. Now, I ran out of fingers, but there was 12 games there that we did not expect something from the Titans, and they've only played 20 this year. So there is a greater than 50% chance that what you think is going to happen against the Titans doesn't happen. And I don't expect them to win here, if I'm honest. The Dragons have won 3 of their last 4 in Wollongong, the Panthers being their only loss at the venue. The Titans have never won in Wollongong. They are 0-5, and the Dragons have won 3 of their last 4 games against the Titans. Jack Bird will likely move to 5'8". Raymond Faitala-Mariner will join their bench. I don't think that hurts them much, having a creative half next to Ben Hunt. So my tip, therefore, all things considered, is Titans head-to-head, because it doesn't make sense. And that's literally the theme of the Titans season. And no one can – if people can dispute it based on what I just said, please do. But facts are facts, Winnie. Titans
well,
are winning.
Ryan's commented, expect the unexpected. It's the opposite day paradox. And I do think it's kind of funny. You made this big case about how the Titans do what you don't expect, which is similar to New Zealand. So, of course, there were massive surprises both times the Titans played New Zealand in retrospect. But you're like, whatever everyone thinks is going to happen won't happen in the Titans game. Therefore, I think the Dragons will win, so I'm tipping the Titans. But the fact that you're saying you're tipping the Titans, so therefore maybe you think the Titans will win, so maybe they won't win. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like you're kind of trying to create a spell here that is going to set up a Titans win, because you're telling us you think the Dragons will win, but you don't, because you're tipping Titans, so you think the Titans will win. So
Right, let me change my tip then.
And look, who knows what's going to happen? Like it easily can be a game that's a one-score game. There was a controversial tight one between these sides last year that I think cost the Titans all hope of making the finals a year ago. Wasn't that where the Dragons came up to the Gold Coast and upset you in a really tight game? It could easily be something similar along those lines. So I'm happy to stay out of it because I do think that the Dragons should win and definitely should get up for it. But these sides, once their season's over, it is a guessing game. They're not going to be at their best for 80 every single week. So you got to pick which occasions. But as you say, the Titans have got a bit to play for with the four-and milestone.
And any try scorers in particular you're looking out for in this game?
Why do you ask me? AKP.
Maybe a little bit off
I didn't share that tip on the pod, but yeah, riding Khan Pereira to be top try scorer would be handy. And he didn't even score last week. Nobody did for the Titans. And yet he's still $1.14. So he's in a strong position at this point.
Very, very strong position, mate. Let's move to the final game as we encroach on that hour mark. Game 8, it's the Sharks v Knights, Sunday, 4 p.m. We're at PointsBet Stadium. Line was -8.5 against Sharks, and it has not moved because there's no changes to their side. For the Knights, Dylan Lucas comes in at the centres and Christian Maipapalangi drops out. Hard not to like the Sharks based on what we saw last round, Winnie. I think they're going to win here and win well. Do you see it similarly?
I do. I was so close. I basically made in my notes Sharks will be the best bet. But then when it came down to actually finding the market or finding the line, I just couldn't find something that I really loved. I wanted to just be able to jag a 7.5 somewhere, or I would have played halftime, full time, and they're both just in the $1.70s. Should I have still laid the 8.5 with the Sharks? I mean, the season is on the line for Newcastle, but it's not as if the game's not a high importance for Cronulla. They're desperate to stay in the top 4, especially after their start to this year. The Sharkies set themselves up so well, and it would be a real failure to miss the 4 after the first half of this year. Brayley is listed in the halves, but didn't play there last week when he was listed at 7. McInnes ended up playing in the halves with Atkinson. You've also got Trindle in the reserves this week, so that could be a return there if the hamstring's good to go. Mulatalo, Hamlin, ULA are also in the reserves. Was it the Sharks' best game of the year last year? It was close to. Last week, I should say. Totally locked in, Cronulla, dominant display. It's just a question of whether the Sharkies can bring that application back to the home turf. And if they do, they'll win this one well. We talked about the Knights in the recap. Very one-dimensional in attack. Now, that one dimension is a generational talent in Kalen Ponga. And sometimes, even when all eyes are on him, he still does special things. But West didn't really highlight the fact that the Knights are not that hard to stop because it was a bit of an open game. And the Knights got a couple of fluky tries. Cronulla will probably show that you can shut down the Sharkies with the current halves combination. And, of course, just missing Bradman Best is so sad because he was having a career season and was such a force to be reckoned with out wide. It's obvious to take Cronulla, but then again, I still think the Sharkies are a bit underrated. I talked about them as a dark horse on Sunday when you asked me. And if you go against the Knights, you are playing against Newcastle after they had a big 13-plus win. So very reluctantly, I left it because at some point, it's not just about what I think is going to happen in the games. It's a combination of what I think will happen and the bets I can find, and if the bookies can get something a bit wrong. And you have to have the discipline. You can't just be like, I'm playing a certain team no matter the price, no matter the line, right? So in the long run, more often than not, if you're right, 7.5 and 8.5, they both win the minus. But it might only be once in every 20 occasions, it lands 8. And in the long run, that can be the difference between profit and loss. So that's why I'll stay away, watch the Sharkies win as easy as you like now.
Yeah, I'm seeing it very similar as well, mate. And I'll start with the Sharks. I think last round they probably couldn't have been more impressive, to be absolutely honest with you. I think looking at their season as a whole, I would agree with you. It probably was their most dominant performance. And they were underdogs, we can't forget. Whereas we crossed the fence to the Knights. Yes, they did win comfortably, but I'll be honest, I wasn't all too impressed. It is worth noting that they had a shared opponent in the Tigers, and the Sharks, when they met the Tigers, were also in a bit of a down spot. They won that game 58 points to 6, and it was a much more comprehensive display than what the Knights shown us when they were facing a tough spot against the Tigers there. We go to the Sharkies at home. They're at PointsBet Stadium. They've got 6 wins at home this year for only 2 losses. And those 2 losses, in all fairness, are to the Panthers and a 2-point loss to the Dolphins. So it's not all bad news there. They almost won that Dolphins game as well. We go to the Knights.
They almost won the Panthers game too.
Yeah, they were just short of covering the line by about...
What was it? Was it 42? Something like that.
Yeah.
With no Cleary as well. Is it you're kind of saying, oh, there's no disrespect in losing to Penrith, but actually that game was very bad.
Yeah, to be fair, that was their worst game all year. So they have had 1 no-show at home this year out of 8 attempts. I think we can agree on that. Whereas when we go to the Knights, they've actually not won in Cronulla since 2014. So it has been a decade. I'm just going to stay on the Knights here, guys. They have the worst attack in the competition statistically this year. They are only scoring 18 points per game on average, and the Sharks are coming off a performance where they didn't allow the Titans to score a single point. And why that's also important is because if you look at the NRL ladder from round 16 up until round 23, the Titans would have been first. So they came into that game against the Sharks with the best for and against and the best competition points in that time of any team in the NRL. And the Sharks dismantled them 44-0. They didn't allow them to score a point. Now we have a Knights team who are only scoring 18 per game. The Sharks are conceding even less than that per game with 17. And I just don't see many points in this Knights side at all. I see another halves pairing more likely for the Knights after this one than I do many points coming for them. So I am very keen on the Sharks, Winnie, which brings me to Clarkey's collect for the week, which is up 13.3 units this year. It did lose last round, unfortunately, guys. But we are going to take Sharks and Cowboys head-to-head. I've given you all the reasons why I'm super confident on both teams there. We're going to take a Roosters team total of plus 26.5. So they must hit 27 points. With this Roosters side, I believe they can achieve that within 1 half realistically against the Eels. The Eels are averaging more than that. The Roosters are averaging more than that in attack this year. You put that together, I think they score that comfortably. And of course, Manly minus 5.5, as I pointed out, all the reasons in that one as well. They've been brewing at home this year. And one thing I didn't actually mention about Manly at home, which I'll quickly tack on, is they do have wins over the Roosters, Storm, and Panthers at home. So it is really a fortress this year for them. I see them beating the Warriors by more than 6. You combine those 4 legs, and you get $3.42 on Top Sport. You guys know how I roll. I like to play some conservative legs, put them together on what I'm most confident on, and get a price around that $3 to $4 mark. And $3.42, Winnie. Is there? How do you feel about Clarkey's Collect this week? Is there anything you would have personally done different when putting together this multi?
No, I like all the legs. I've got best bets on 3 of those 4 teams, and Cronulla, I had a strong lean. The way you build these, it's like you are setting it up for 4 different opportunities for something to go wrong.
Yep.
But you are picking confident sides, and then you're shifting the line in your favor. So you're allowing a bit of wiggle room if a bit goes wrong. But if there's a major shock, you're going to lose. But that's okay. It's paying close to $3.50. So I can't fault Clarkey's Collect this week. I mean, do you know the price you got on Roosters over 26.5?
Not much. I think it was like $1.30. It was quite low.
So I mean, the Roosters team total is 32.5, I think. So by bringing it down to 26.5, you're buying an extra 6 points at $1.30. Whether that's a big that's a big sacrifice going from like $1.90 to $1.30 for 6 points.
Yeah.
But it does make it a bit safer for you. So in terms of if I'm going to critique you, sometimes I'd say go more bold and just actually take the full two-way market for head-to-head. Yeah, and you're not, or total. You're not going to win as often, but when you do win, you'd have a magnified odds multi. But people can also tweak your multi to their liking, and if there's one leg they're sketchy on, they can leave it out. if they want to go a safer version or a riskier iteration, they also can build it their way, and they can let us know in the comments. To remind you all of I've got 5 best bets this week after 6 last week where we went 4 and 2. And I'll put it on the screen as well. Storm plus 2.5 in the clear game of the round. That's first half, $1.88, lads and nets. Manly to win both halves, copy me Dabble, $1.92. Roosters to win both halves, copy me on Dabble, $1.80. Cows minus 5.5, $1.82, 365. Tigers plus 6.5, $1.88 on Sportsbet. And mixed matchup to come out tomorrow.
Love it, mate. Love your work. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the show today. Don't forget, we'll be back, or Winnie will be back within 15 minutes of full time on Sunday to recap how Clarkey's collect went and all of his best bets. I will be in a car driving back to Canberra from Wollongong, soaking up a glorious Titans win for Kieran Foran's 300th, if all things go to plan, mate. But that's all from me. Thank you very much for being with us, guys, and over to you, Winnie, for the final word.
Thanks, as always, for joining us, guys. Give the show a like if you got on the Golden Multi. We prepare now. I'll go back to training, and I'll start researching every event for LA 2028. But in the meantime, look, this has been my worst ever season of NRL, by the way, of course. 45 and 48 on the best bets. It's been a really tough year. I've called it the season from hell. So you might think it's gone more slowly than usual, but I'm still like, how is it already round 24? So let's just enjoy this of getting 8 games of footy every single weekend, because it's going to be gone before we know it as well. And we've definitely done a lot better in the last couple of months of this season. I hope it continues. But if you think I'm going wrong in any of my plays, let me know as always. Have a fantastic week, guys. Enjoy the footy, and I'll catch you Sunday night. Lego.